Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier, and thank you for stopping by. If you haven't seen my Mind Speak session, I covered a lot of interesting points, in particular about the oil warfare that I saw President Obama waging against Vladimir Putin, and gave him the reasons behind it. And essentially, we've dropped down now below $50 again on WTI, and I think we're going to have a second washout, and this time way below 40. In point of fact, do have a look at my interview with Peter in Gano at UAP Investments. We're doing some work with them, and very interesting fellow with a very interesting sort of North American and Kenyan philosophy. 9th of February I wrote King Dollar, and it sort of put my thoughts as to why I think this is the year of the dollar, which I've been thinking for quite a while actually. And on therefore macro thoughts, I put up the photo of the shark, because this is the time to be a shark in my view. And now that I'm back to swinging a line, when you're a trader and the markets are like this, a little bit like the golf course I once played on in Arizona, you can read the greens, well, as long as the market allows you to. I like these sorts of very volatile environments where we get big moves, you know, and I like and I need my Hannah's blessing in the morning and a smile, and in the evening, and I always feel a lot better after that. It gives me a lot of sort of satisfaction. And last night I got home and asked, where is my Hannah? Put up a photograph of her horse riding at Mount Kenya Safari Club. I must take her back there again. And her mother said, don't you know she is at the school disco? And when she came home, she was so flush, the blood was in her face, and I just sat down and watched her. You know those times when we were all a lot younger, and we might have gone out and had a great Gatsby-like party. Quote Gatsby, there was music from my neighbour's house through the summer nights, in his blue gardens. Men and girls came and went like moths among the whisperings and the champagne and the stars. And when I saw her, I'd imagined her being somewhere just like that. And another Scott Fitzgerald quote, for a transitory, enchanted moment, man must have held his breath in the presence of this continent, put Hannah in there for me, compelled into an aesthetic contemplation he neither understood nor desired, face to face for the last time in history, with something commensurate to his capacity for wonder. And the girls cheeked are flushed and everything is possible, going back to coming home in those old days. Well, that's the face she had, and it was a pleasure just to bask in its glow. I'll put up a photograph of her and her mother riding along the lake shore at Lake Elmenteita, Serena, and really that is probably, in my opinion, their best property outside the Polana. Political reflections, pro-Russian separatists in eastern Ukraine say they have completely surrounded the strategic town of Debaltseve, a claim denied by the Ukrainian army, who insist the fighting is ongoing. Rockets hit headquarters deep in Ukraine-held territory, casting a shadow over these talks. I concluded by saying Vladimir is pressing his advantage, and the one advantage he truly understands, a lot more than oil warfare, for example. And I take you back to the 25th of August when I said NATO has thrown out a whole new characterization of warfare called ambiguous warfare. Eastern Ukraine has become a shadow zone, indeed it has. The BBC has an exclusive interview with President Bashar al-Assad. It's well worth listening to. The Syrian leader denied that there was a direct dialogue with the US-led coalition fighting Islamic State, but confirmed that general messages were sometimes passed via third parties. And I listened to this interview in the background, and he is so much more sophisticated than the interviewer. And if you were able to just drop your prejudices, you would understand what he's saying. And he's been saying it consistently. Put up a photograph of him that was published by Sana. The US has closed its Yemen embassy and has ordered the ambassador to leave. That's a worrying sign, and as I said, and I think Saudi Arabia will be responsible for much of this landscape around them. and it's now blowing back onto the kingdom. China's navy to send more ships to the Indian Ocean. This is the diplomat during a press conference on January 29. A spokesperson of the Chinese Ministry of National Defense announced that China will step up its deployment of a range of warships in the Indian Ocean. IHS's James reports that Senior Colonel Yang Yu-jun, after being asked a question on planned submarine movements in the Indian Ocean, tried to downplay Chinese naval activities in the region, characterizing them as normal, anything but, and emphasizing that there is no need to read too much into them. Well, that's a signal for you to read everything you can into them. The Chinese military has sent various kinds of naval ships to the Gulf of Aden and the waters off the Somali coast to conduct escort missions since 2008. And in the process, we have notified relevant countries of the escort missions of the PLA naval ships, including the PLA naval submarines, Yang said in his remarks. In the future, the Chinese military will send different kinds of naval ships to take part in the naval escort missions in accordance with the situation and the requirement to fulfill the task. The presence of Chinese submarine forces in the ocean has the other great regional power, India, worried. Indian military officers have stated that the deployment of nuclear subs could cross a red line and trigger a naval arms race. That's inevitable. As my colleague Shannon Tietze pointed out this morning, many Indian and Western analysts believe that China is pursuing a clear-cut long-term naval strategy to dominate the Indian Ocean. This is the string of pearls hypothesis. China will try to expand its naval presence by building civilian maritime infrastructure along the Indian Ocean periphery. Those ports, in turn, could be put to dual use eventually and serve as naval ports for ships of the PLA. And conclusions. I made these conclusions on the 19th of August 2013 and before. And I said, you know, sine qua non of President Obama's pivot to Asia is NATO, US NATO, power projection over the Indian Ocean. I put up a photograph of Ali the navigator, who navigated us to Wasini Island over Christmas. And essentially, to go back to that point I was making about the sine qua non control over the Indian Ocean. Basically, with control of the Indian Ocean, because China uplifts so much of its energy, you can basically cut off China very, very quickly. And that's why I think, you know, US maritime supremacy is part of the pivot and part of the strategy. I think that's what China's trying to push back against. I'll put up a photograph of Pemba Island taken from the sky. That's just off Mozambique. Prince Charles is in Saudi Arabia, and he raised the issue of the jailed blogger Raif Badawi, good for him, with King Salman. I couldn't resist this headline, and how atrocious when you think of how little this boy was. We dream about drones, he said. 13-year-old Yemeni before his death in a CIA strike. Euro below 113, but it's been in this range now this week of 113.40, 112.70. I'm looking for a breakdown. Very strong sterling. Dollar index 94.76. That was this morning. It's higher now. Dollar yen 119, just shy of 120. Pound 152.86. That's had a big jump. I don't know what the data was. I was in meetings. Aussie 0.7769. India rupee 62.215. South Korean won 1096.32. The Real 283.46. Egyptian pound 761.07. And the South African rand 1167.89. Dollar index, my target has been 100 for a while. It remains 100. Euro dollar, my target is parity, and then 0.93. I like this tweet from Nanex LLC, currencies all over the map. That was yesterday morning. Commodity markets, crude oil. When I walked in this morning, it was at $50.48. It's now at $49.53. And I think it's about to break down big time. Oil prices are expected to test support levels. They've broken through them, with Brent crude showing a good chance of breaking below $56.21. US crude support was 49.88. We're now at 49.57. I've been a bear since I wrote that piece in October 2014. Crude oil, I'll also put up a 3-month chart. Listen to this. Oil stocks held by countries in the OECD may come close to the all-time high of 2.83 billion barrels in the middle of 2015. Another report of strong bills and inventories in this week's EAI market report could halt oil's rally. Have a look at this as of yesterday, which was the divergence between NYMEX and Brent. Quite interesting. Gold, we're now down near the 1234 level. The top is in. We're not going anywhere near there again. Sub-Saharan Africa, US envoy, this is Russ Feingold, urges Congo to set date for the presidential election. DRC should promptly set a date for a presidential election in 2016, a senior envoy said on Monday, increasing international pressure on President Kabila to step down at the polls next year. Last month, street protests killed 42 people, forced lawmakers to drop an electoral reform bill the opposition said was aimed at keeping Kabila in power. The attention has now shifted to the National Independent Electoral Commission, which has yet to set a date for the election. We would like to see that global calendar as soon as possible, including in particular the confirmation that the presidential election will be held before the end of 2016. Don't think that's going to happen. Russ. And I concluded by saying, is Kabila listening to the message from Ouagadougou? On the 10th of November, I wrote Ouagadougou's signal to sub-Saharan Africa. And I said, you know, the tipping point for this accelerated sequence of events was President Compaore's stacking parliament in order to extend the presidential term limit. There are plenty of African presidents who are seeking to pull off the same magic trick, and events in Ouagadougou have surely put them on notice. Lambert Mende, the Kabila spokesman, said there is no chance the president will stand again. Let's see if that plays out. Ouagadougou Airport, I'll put up a photograph of that. South African oil share off to a blistering start in 2015, up 4.78% year to date. On that note, I'll put up a photograph of a sunset in Johannesburg 312 days ago. South Africa's unemployment rate declined to a one-year low of 24.3% in the fourth quarter, which is interesting, isn't it? And last year I did write a piece saying that I think people are unduly pessimistic. It's not a great, you know, there are challenges in South Africa, but occasionally it's as if everyone wants to throw in the towel. The Egyptian pound 761, that's been a sharp slide. You remember we were at 715 for eternity. I remember every time I do the podcast I'd say 715. Then boom, next time we're 761. Egyptian stock market, best performing stock market in Africa in 2015, as it was in 2014, up a blistering 10.95% year to date. Now, Nigeria, according to the latest opinion poll involving 2,400 prospective voters from across the country, the percentage of voters who said they would vote for each party is equal at 42%. That, I'm afraid, is a recipe for a disaster. Nigeria all share the worst performing stock index in the world, down 15.96% year to date. The Naira retreated as much as 1.5% to 199.1 per dollar, touched 200. I don't know what it's done today. Currency is depreciated yesterday for a seventh day, weakest level ever. Down 7.8% through this morning, the most among 24 currencies, African currencies tracked by Bloomberg. And I said on the 19th of November, the currency heads to 200. The central bank does not have the firepower. Then Ravi tweeted me, Naira drops to 200 per dollar for first time ever. That was yesterday. I'll put up that image. On the 21st of January, I said about Emefiele, I said the currency is headed to 220, and Emefiele's finger in the dike strategy is about to be overwhelmed by a tsunami. That tsunami has been hitting Nigeria. And then I take it back to January 2015 when I said the oil warfare specialist President Obama has successfully wrestled crude to below $50. It's below 50 again. And with that effected a chokehold on Putin, on Venezuela, and others as far afield as Nigeria and Angola. Nigeria is a case in point. And I wrote another piece, this Nigeria in the Eye of the Storm. General Obasanjo, in an interview given to Katrina Manson's of the Financial Times, says the signs are not auspicious in the wake of the 6-week postponement of the general election. I sincerely hope that the president is not going for broke and saying, look, damn it, it's either I have it or nobody has it. I hope, he says, that we will not have a coup. I hope we can avoid it. The Ghana Stock Exchange is down 5.11% year to date. Coming to Kenya, East African breweries up 3.896% year to date. Strong move this week. And they're releasing first half earnings on Friday. I'll be there. I'll be doing an interview with Charles, which will be a follow-on interview to one I did before. The link is on Rich Wrap-Ups if you want to just get a picture of what he was saying then. And I'll put a photograph of him when he invited me to a Johnny Walker party with Chris Karubi and Charles, and it was a high old time we had. Safaricom is up 5.338% year to date and just 1.33% below a record high of 15 set last year. I did an interview with Bob after his first half results. Do have a look at that. Plenty of content in there. He's a friend, I'll put up a photograph of him that I took of him and myself. KCB up 3.508% year to date, 1.66% below record closing high reached last August. If you didn't see my recent interview with Joshua, please have a look. It's absolutely fantastic. And he has probably the least cluttered desk of anybody I know in Africa. Put up a photograph of that desk. Kenya shilling 91.50 last. Nairobi all share has closed at a record all-time high every session this week. It's up 3.95% year to date. My theory, which I said from the beginning of the year, is that lots of Africa-focused monies have rerouted from destination Lagos to destination Cairo, destination Johannesburg, and destination Nairobi. Jubilee Insurance up 19.777% year to date, closed at a record for the second consecutive session. Kakuzi up 36.666% in 2015, closed at a record for the second consecutive session yesterday. The NSE 20 up 3.92% year to date, is at 5-month highs. Agricultural sector was strong. Kakuzi, Sassini turned higher, Williamson as well. Safaricom unchanged at 1480, just a smidgen below an all-time high at 15. It's going to go through that. KCB a little bit circumspect ahead of 60. It's trading 59. Centum announced they'd entered the beer market via snaffling up the Carlsberg franchise. EABL will report results on Friday. I think earnings are going to beat street estimates by quite a margin, and a move in the price to 400 is expected by me this year. Kenol Kobil was strong yesterday, up 1.01%. Kenol Kobil up 14.94% year to date. Total Kenya up 14.58% year to date. Both going higher, I think, on the idea that the Energy Regulatory Commission has been slow to pass through price reductions and therefore has left some pretty juicy profits with these operators. If you want to follow the stock market, just register on rich.co.ke, get a password and go to Rich Live and you'll be off and away. Once again, thank you.